Me, it's been interesting to be able to go back and see really how quantum leap of what you have accomplished in your business.
Yeah.
Another thing that we had done is I brought in a bunch of people from out of state to your hostage negotiation, and you taught these principles that that you learned in the police force and in SWAT, and then you brought in these really incredible psychologists to be able to explain it, and the connections between business and SWAT are, not SWAT, but all of these military organizations are really paralleling each other, and the fears that you have. Now, you have taken a huge leap since I talked to you last about 6 years ago. We decided, and now you're doing extremely well with your businesses. Did all of that previous training help you with that, or did you need to find different mentors to be able to help you build upon all of those skills that you developed?
So
Hey, welcome to Networking Star. I am your host, Jeffrey Boyle. And here on Networking Star, I have very interesting entrepreneurs that inspire us and really, help us have, be, and do more in life. Today, I have an old friend, so it's even easier. Matt Schneider. He is, since I saw him last, has become I'll just say it, Matt, a business tycoon where he does 8-figure business coaching. He does couples coaching. They have business, everything from software to fitness to equity to construction, man. He does it all. And this is a former SWAT commander. And Matt, great to have you on here. So the last time I saw you, we had taken your team to a hotel lobby, not a hotel lobby, but a big hotel conference room. And we set up you explain it. It was the most powerful business seminar I'd ever put on. And everybody was super wary. I was like, what are you going to do? But explain a little bit of how you transformed this business conference into one of the coolest business meetings we'd ever have using airsoft guns and hostage negotiation. And a teddy bear. Yeah.
That's funny. It has been a number of years ago, but that's right. That was a really cool experience. Look, everybody has that desire to, be the superhero, right? And to that, good conquers evil, and to get to be either that Laura Croft or that 007 kind of figure. And that's what we set up in that conference room in Vegas is a shoot house using airsoft, staging a teddy bear, and then just creating a lot of outside chaos to have to navigate through. And what we were teaching in the environment of essentially getting to play the superhero and the rescuer is how to control your emotions, how to control your thoughts, how to not let outside influences and outside stress and chaos dictate the way in which you navigate the environment. And really, when you just boil it down, getting to a place to where people are responding versus reacting, because that's something that happens a lot these days, and it gets a lot of people in trouble is they react.
No, people don't react anymore. People are completely harmonious, right? It's wild how combative we have become. But I would tell you that the people that were there, they'd never been a part of a business conference like that, where we had your team, you had former police officers, you had former you had special forces people there. And it was one of the coolest team building experiences that really a lot of those guys had ever been through. Yeah. And I know that you've kind of pivoted now and you're doing couples conferences. Before you had surrounded yourself, because the first time I went there, I got an airsoft pellet caught in my net from a Glock firing it. It was one of the coolest experiences ever. And we sponsored 3 or 4 events together. Yeah. But now you and your wife, instead of surrounding yourself with special forces guys, you're doing couples events. Talk to me a little bit about that transition and how you've done that.
Yeah, well, that business that you're referring to, we started in 2013, and the first, couple of years were really, really challenging. And it was because my wife and I, we were operating in silos, and we weren't working in a way to where we were systematically setting and achieving goals together. We were actually setting separate goals and working towards those independently. And so in many ways we were just kind of like an average married couple that also owned a business. But taking a divide and conquer approach when you're married is not a really healthy thing for the long term, right?
Well, that's what most of us do. I mean, most of us are so wrapped up in it that we all think that we've got to divide and conquer, but that's a lot of what you're talking about now. Fixing that.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, division in a key relationship is not a good thing, right? You need uniformity and you need cohesiveness. And so my wife and I, we figured that out after going through some really troubling and hard times. And we're on the brink of divorce and bankruptcy. And it was just really challenging there for us. But we figured out that we were better together and that we could achieve force multiplication if we would just align on what it was that we wanted to accomplish and then leverage each other's natural gifts, talents, strengths, zones of genius to systematically just knock out those priorities. And we would achieve more together and we would do so faster. And there's a lot of people out there, Jeff, that, they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. Right. And that's, I call BS on that. If you want to go fast and far, you can absolutely do it with others, but you have to have the right people at the table, right? You have to have the right people on your team. And if you do, you can accomplish really incredible things. That's what my wife and I have been able to do.
Well, it's at your place, and I guess I have to kind of set the picture for it. You had a place here in Idaho. It's a giant warehouse. And inside the warehouse, you had a bank, you had 2 different homes. And I think the first time I got shot, it made me feel pretty good because it was an Army Ranger who shot me in the throat. You put us through this training and all of a sudden we all feel like we're good at it. And then you put us against the pros and you pick us off one by one. It was a spectacular experience. But I look at what you're doing now. And it kind of cracked me up. You had a photo with your wife and she has a big black eye. She's doing jujitsu now. Has she always been doing jujitsu? Is this just something now you guys are figuring it out together?
No. So what's funny is that, my son and I, we started jujitsu back in 2016. And he had got put in a headlock by another little boy at church and, just boys being boys, but he was really upset by it because he didn't know what to do. And so I said, hey, let's go start this father-son thing. And so we walked into a jiu-jitsu studio. It's called Team Rhino. And I signed both of us up right there. We've been training ever since. My wife, she would come and watch with curiosity and intrigue for a couple of years, but because there wasn't a lot of females that were training, she was hesitant to get involved because, of course, in jiu-jitsu, there's no personal space whatsoever. But I would tell her, and I tell others, it's a little bit crude, but it's true. The women do not get raped standing up; it happens lying down. And so I would say, Kristen, if you and other women would do more of this kind of training, the domestic violence rates would go down, sexual assault rates would go down, right, and crimes overall against women would go down because we know that 1 in 4 women in their lifetime are sexually assaulted, and that's a dramatically underreported crime. So she always had interest in it, but it just wasn't the right dynamic until it was that we moved to California in 2019 for some business, and we started at a school there called Sector, and there was a bunch more females that were training there. So she got involved at that point, and so for the last few years, she's been training with us. We train 3 to 4 days a week. But what you're referencing with that black eye, it makes me laugh because, first of all, in our 40s, it's a lot of people don't expect you to be doing jujitsu, when you're in your 40s and beyond. But we're very active in it. And so we were traveling down to Scottsdale, Arizona for a variety of conferences. But a couple of things that we were doing down there was a couples mastermind, in-person mastermind, and also a masterclass, an online masterclass on the cohesion effect. And so the next day, after we arrive in Scottsdale, but the day before the masterclass, we go to an Alliance jiu-jitsu gym down there. And when you travel and you go down to these other schools, they always like to test you, right? You're like, they want to see what you're about. So we're getting put through the paces. Now I'm a purple belt. So at this point I have a little bit figured out, not too much, but a little bit. Kristen's a blue belt. And so she's going against another blue belt, and she gets like kneed in the eye, like right below the eye. And she tells me, oh, this is going to be a black eye. I got kneed pretty good. So sure enough, the next day, here we are doing a couples masterclass online, and she's got this big old shiner.
Nice.
And so I you can imagine what people are thinking, right? And she says, nobody asks me about it. I'm like, Kristen, you can bet they're looking at it, and you can bet we know what they're thinking. So then we, 2 days later, we're doing this in-person mastermind. We got this incredible 10,000 square foot, incredible Airbnb home in Scottsdale. And we had, a couple of dozen people come and were part of this thing. And I said, you got to tell people what happened, because we were just at Costco and we were getting all the food and everything for it. And we pushed it up to the checkout, and the gal was like, "Oh, it looks like you guys are doing something fun. What do you got? What are you guys up to?" And my wife's like, "Oh, it's a couples mastermind we're doing." And the checker looks at Kristen and looks at me, looks at Kristen again. It's like almost she was waiting for like that sign, like the I need help.
The explanation, some kind of clue of what happened.
Yeah, but I wasn't about to try to explain it, because it's just it's futile. It's like, the more you try to explain it, the more you look guilty, right? So I'm like, and she totally forgets she had it. But yeah, it's one of the joys of doing jiu-jitsu is you're always banged up and bruised, and when you're the guy, I think people look at you like you're the culprit. So that part can be fun.
Well, I mean, you guys, for me, it's been interesting to be able to go back and see really how quantum leap of what you have accomplished in your business.
Yeah.
So another thing that we had done is I brought in a bunch of people from out of state to your hostage negotiation, and you taught these principles that you learned in the police force and in SWAT, and then you brought in these really incredible psychologists to be able to explain it. And the connections between business and SWAT are, not SWAT, but all of these military organizations are really paralleling each other, and the fears that you have. Now, you have taken a huge leap since I talked to you last about 6 years ago. We decided, and now you're doing extremely well with your businesses. Did all of that previous training help you with that, or did you need to find different mentors to be able to help you build upon all of those skills that you developed?
So, I mean, it was absolutely mentors. I mean, mentorship, coaching has been just incredibly essential. Anytime you're like super into the weeds on whatever's going on, you're missing all the things that are happening around you just because you're in the trenches, and in the earlier years when my wife and I were entrepreneurs, we couldn't see the forest of the trees because we were too busy trying to figure out the secret sauce to making this really incredible business thrive. And being that I came from a law enforcement background, I had very low business acumen, right? And so a lot of things, they were
common sense. Great critical thinking. I mean, the things that you were teaching us as business people, it was turning lights on all over the place, but you were missing a piece of that on how to monetize what you were teaching then.
Correct. Yeah. Because I figured out that what I could pull into the business world and teach was that there's 4 elements within special operations that apply to business and being able to have a successful, thriving company. And that's teamwork, leadership, problem solving, and communication. Those 4 things, when you extract the weapons and the tactics and the things that you see in the movies within special operations, those 4 things are what keep special operations team at the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
And so I figured out how to translate that into business and talk about it. But when it came to operating in a space where I was leading a team that wasn't part of a special operations entity or a government entity, it was a very different dynamic. And strategizing how to scale a company that takes it takes either background and experience, or it takes mentorship. And so for me, it took a while to understand that I needed mentorship, and eventually I sought it out. And that is when everything began to change for my wife and I, and it changed things in the most dramatic ways.
So I keep going back to these, and maybe it's because maybe you've done other podcasts that are different than this, but mine are always directed towards the new entrepreneur and even the established entrepreneur that needs to relaunch, rethink, and just redo, I guess. And so one of the things that I loved is, so this was a massive area that you had. I mean, you had a mini city in there,
mm-hmm.
and you guys would coach us and talk about a teamwork. So you would clear rooms with 3 people,
mm-hmm.
you and 2 other people. And if you've never seen professionals clear rooms, you see it on movies or something like that, but you have this really cool thing that we could look up from above down
mm-hmm.
below. So we would follow you doing this, and you guys would teach it, and we'd clumsily get through it. And then you guys would go through and clear out this entire house almost without seeing a word to each other, just looking at each other. You had each other's back and all this. But basically what you're telling me is you perfected that in the physical format, but the mental format, you and your wife, you were completely divided with where you're approaching it. And that's so interesting. Talk a little bit about that, of how that's helped you guys with couples and other businesses. You taught it, but you weren't living it until you pieced that together. So explain that a little bit to me.
Yeah. So to be able to be like super effective in the tactics and the flow that you're describing, everybody is an absolute expert and professional in the work that they are doing. So what a lot of people don't realize, what they're looking at when they see a team of 6 or 8 guys approaching a structure, is within that space, you have the team leader that's generally in that number 3 or number 4 spot. You have the breacher, you have a mechanical breacher, an explosive breacher, the canine guy, the medic, the communications, right? And so everybody is an operator, but also everybody has their specialty, and everyone is required to execute with precision within their specialty and within the dynamic as a whole, as a team. And because you spend so much time doing the sets and the reps and time and attention with a team, with just a really focused understanding of what the end goal looks like, you are able to perform at a very high level. And what I've been able to find, and we were guilty of this too, Jeff, is that when it comes to businesses and when it comes to things like, special operations versus the family, is there is very clear KPIs in special operations. There are very clear KPIs and goals and objectives in business. And there's a lot of energy that's put into that. And there's meetings, there's conversations, and, what are we going to achieve by when and who's doing what? But then when you go to the home and you ask the spouses, hey, what are the goals for the family? What's being achieved by when? At the end of this quarter, what does it look that you're going to accomplish? What does done look like? You're getting 2 different answers between the husband and the wife. And if they're able to explain what a win even looks like, they're generally not looking the same whatsoever, right? And so how tragic is that you have people that are doing life together that are living with less intentionality than the people that you go to work with, right? And that your goals and KPIs and things are crystal clear for business, but not within the family when you're raising kids and you're creating a generational impact and hopefully generational wealth. And so that's what some of the things that we're missing back then, is not living with intentionality and treating the business with more priority than our family. And that should never be the case.
Yeah. Well, you've also made a lot of different changes. I saw one of your reels where you talked about quitting in a good way. And you a couple of things that I know that you've made dramatic changes. You quit chewing tobacco, and I would guess that was a big part of just that world that you lived in.
Yeah.
And another thing, you have gotten in way better shape since I saw you last.
Yeah.
How does quitting? So talk a little bit about the quitting and how it makes an impact, and talk about how changing your body may have given you the confidence to be able to make big changes in your business as well.
Yeah. Look, it's, what we say yes to and what we say no to is massively important, right? And too many people are getting the things that they're accepting, but they don't like it, right? They don't like the things that they're getting, but they continue to accept the things that are facilitating their realities that they don't like. And it comes down to living with core values and having a high standard of expectations of yourself first, and then of others that you're going to allow to have a seat at your table. It's also understanding that if you want to live an optimized life, you've got to operate in a way to where you're earning your seat at other people's table that are living an optimized life. Now, we never arrive. There's never a point where we make it to that very best version of ourselves. And if we're willing to continue doing the work day after day, we'll continue to progress day after day. And in an ideal circumstance, the day that we do die is the day that we are the very best version of ourselves. And if we were given one more day to live, we would be a better version that day than we were today, right? And so there's a tremendous amount of responsibility that people don't take when it comes to the realities of their circumstances. And so this whole quit thing was, choose things and people and circumstances that are not serving you well, aren't serving your family well, your future well, your goals well, and cut those things out of your life. There's a lot of people who have relationships with people, things, habits, places that are the exact opposite of what they need to achieve their goals. And if they would just quit those things, just quitting that in and of itself will move them closer to their goals. And it will open up opportunities to get closer to the people, things, habits, places that will incrementally expedite them achieving their goals. And so when it comes to, achieving goals and whatever that is, and what, however people define wealth is up to them, right? Everybody defines it a little bit differently. But whatever it is for each individual, what I'll tell you is that you'll never get there. You'll never achieve it if you're not right with yourself first. Right. If you have undealt with issues, undealt with traumas, undealt with, circumstances, if you lack credibility with yourself, which is something that happens a lot, people, they lack complete credibility with themselves because they say one thing and they do something else. They make promises that they don't keep. They make commitments that they don't keep. And they tell themselves, I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to eat this, or I'm going to do that. And ultimately they don't. And so in their own minds and their subconscious, it's like, you're a fraud, man. Like you say that, but you're not going to do that. And it requires nobody else to even be aware of it, because we know when we make a commitment, and we know if we honor that commitment or we don't. And so, to your point about the fitness piece of it is, you've got to get whole with yourself. You've got to get mentally, physically, emotionally whole and optimized. And the more we are optimized within ourselves first, the more we're able to provide to those that we love and that love us, right? Because we can't give what we don't have. So it's not a selfish thing. My wife and I both operate in this way to make ourselves a priority, so that way we can make the relationship a priority.
Yeah. I have a gentleman I work with out of Mexico, and he just does so much for my business. And we did, he would be an employee if he weren't in Mexico, but he's such a great entrepreneur at the same time. And he's a young guy, and he's about to get married, and I don't think he'd even care if I talk too much about it. But he asked me about, how is it that my wife figured things out? And I said, oh, you should have seen us 25 years ago when we got married. We had a lot to figure out, and I think that that's kind of what you're talking about a little bit, is as he looks at his future, at a woman he loves, and thinks of the future, and how do you work together? And that's a tough question. That's a tough question. You love this person so much, but when you get married, you're attracted to your opposite. You're not attracted to the person that's a lot like you. You're attracted to someone who's very different from you. Mm-hmm. And that's what attracts you to them. And then all of a sudden you get married, or you're about to get married, and you realize, man, there's some things about this person that really bugs me. Mm-hmm. But that's what attracted you to the person in the first place. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about how you and your wife, because you're very different people, how is it that you guys went from silos to cohesion? What did you guys have to do to be able to really come together like that?
Yeah. So, our spouse is the one person we choose to do life with, right? Our kids don't choose to come to this world. They didn't choose us.
And then they leave us at 18 anyways.
And right, exactly. Then they go start their own families, right? Then they go choose their spouse, and then they build a life with their spouse. Our spouse is the one person we choose to do life with. And that's the one person that wants us to win more than anybody else in the world, right? Yeah. We have a lot of cheerleaders and a lot of people rooting for us, but our spouse, the one person that we're doing life with, they want us to win. We want them to win. They want us to win. And we don't want a replica of us, because there's no real value to us in being able to do that. That's why opposites do attract. And we want people who are able to provide elements that are critically important that we don't bring to the table. And when people forget that we don't have all the answers. Like I don't have all the answers, and I don't have all the necessary skills to navigate this world by myself. And I rely on my wife's natural gifts and talents to fill in the voids that I bring, right? And she does the same for me. So I am the equivalent of the gas pedal in the relationship, and she's the equivalent of the brake, right? Without her, I would go flying off the edge of a cliff at 1,000 miles an hour, and without me, she would go nowhere. Between the two of us, because we committed some time ago to really evaluating and celebrating the differences and figuring out how to leverage those within our relationship and our goal setting. That is how we became super cohesive. So, as an example, last January, her and I took a trip up to McCall, which you're familiar with, and we spent the weekend up there. A beautiful place called Shore Lodge, and her and I, for the entire weekend, we sat down and we mapped out what is it that we want to accomplish personally and professionally in the year of 2023. And so we mapped out what I want to accomplish, what she want to accomplish, what we want to accomplish as a couple and as a family, and then as a being that we're serial entrepreneurs, what we wanted to accomplish in these different businesses. And this was a conversation. This is a collaboration, right? And then once we established what we wanted to accomplish, we said, okay, now how do we prioritize these? So we just put them in order in which we wanted to achieve them, and what we're going to work on together. So rather than doing this divide and conquer thing, we said, okay, here are our top priorities. Here's what you'll do. Here's what I'll do. And this is what done looks like. And boom, now that one's done. And now we just go down the list. And that's how we're able to accomplish so much. And it's a very common thing, Jeff. People are like, how do you guys do so much? Like, how do you accomplish so much? You guys have a number of businesses. They're all very successful and thriving. And yet it seems like you guys are always like bike riding or traveling or like, playing. And it's like, well, it's because we're super cohesive, and we built super cohesive teams, and building and maintaining cohesive teams is an art form. But when you figure that out, you get other people to build your businesses and to help thrive.
Yeah. Well, you guys, for me, it's been fun just to see the difference with you. And I think, you call yourself serial entrepreneur. I'm a bit of a fanatical entrepreneur. And if it weren't for my wife, I probably would never go on vacations. And then, and when I go, of course, she knows that I need it. There's no one that understands me the way that she does. And I, that's the way it's supposed to be. But sometimes it can take years to figure that out.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a matter of really finding the person that you love, that you adore, that you can get past those differences till you can have that true cohesion. One of the things that, I talked about a little bit, and I saw you when your businesses were struggling. And there's this study by Wharton, the business school of University of Pennsylvania. And it basically says that if entrepreneurs are making money, they're happier. And people would say, well, duh. Well, the reality of it is money just is options. And you've kind of talked on that just a little bit. How do you get out of that mode of constantly thinking business? And this is a question not just for you, but it's for me as well. My wife and I had to go to Costa Rica for a while and to figure that out. So how is a person that's building the business to be that is cohesive with the spouse? How do you then take that time, as you're saying, traveling and still not just be completely freaked out about what's going on at home?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's two things. Thing number one is, in order for us to even, step away in vacation or just like not always be switched on about each business and what each business is doing is been a matter of creating entrepreneurs within each company, people who they know they don't own the business, but they genuinely treat the business as if it is their own. That's one of the areas that I think, because of my background within entrepreneurism and special operations and mentorship and just where I've come from, I've been able to achieve quite well. And so when you can look around and see that you have people that are genuinely working their tails off and are happy to do it because they're in the right seat, they are achieving their goals, their dreams, their aspirations, and therefore things are getting done and operations are happening and tasks are getting knocked out. That allows for me to just be completely at peace with things that are happening. And I know that I'll get a call if I need to, if anything were to be happening or there be a problem, I'll get a call. But I don't get called very often at all because they're entrepreneurs. Now,
see, but that's leadership too, that what you're talking about. It's really difficult for some guys to give up any control. And as a result of it, they lose the best people because the best people can't be controlled, right? They can work together. And I think that that's a statement for what you've learned. And I would guess that all these military guys and all this tactical training that you've learned, you can't have control of every situation. You have to find the best people and empower them.
Yeah, you do. And, and people will say, oh, like everybody's replaceable, or, don't ever think you can find somebody who will treat your business as if it's their own. And that's simply, I don't subscribe to that. And it's not been my experience either, that I think you can replace the person, the body, the seat that was filled, you can replace that, but that doesn't seem, to work out very well when people feel like they're just a number or a cog in the wheel, right? And so I take a completely different approach to it, and I treat everybody and give everybody an opportunity to get involved to the degree that they want to. But I also have very high standards and very high expectations, so it makes for a great recipe for others who have high standards and expectations as well, because they only want to work with others who have that, right? They only want to work for people who are highly driven and that they could rely on to improve their time, talents, and livelihood. And that's what I bring to the table. And so they're happy to be part of it, because there are A+ players out there who don't want to be entrepreneurs. They're not interested in being an entrepreneur, but they want to work for A+ teams. And so those are the ones that either we are doing a great job at attracting or developing, because there's people who they have the ability to learn and grow into that space, and we help them do that. And so, creating entrepreneurs, maintaining entrepreneurs, creating and maintaining entrepreneurs, that's been key. But then to your other question about, switching things off, is I'll tell you one thing that I learned and was solidified in my psyche, Jeff, when I was a young cop, was that, the impermanence of life, how delicate life is. And I wasn't even on patrol yet. Like, I was in training to go on patrol back in 2007. And we got dispatched to a fatality car crash, right? And I found myself for the first time standing over a dead body, somebody who was just alive not long ago and no longer was, and had no idea today was going to be their last day, right? And then that repeated in this mental loop of they had no idea today was their last day, was played over and over and over again. And so I developed this real urgency to live and to achieve and to create the biggest impact, that as many experiences as possible, make life as colorful as possible. And you mentioned it, like, owning a business that's not thriving and making a lot of money isn't all that fun. Owning a business that is, it's borderline, operating completely independent of you, and is making money, is profitable, that is a lot of fun. Yeah. And there's a lot you can do with that.
And I think that goes back to that study. And, people can say money doesn't make you happy. I'm like, well, man, lack of money sure can make you miserable. That's for sure. And I congratulate you, man. It's been so cool. Gosh, 6 years. I guess we live in the same city again, but it has been really cool to catch up with you. And we could do, it's kind of thing, the depth of just the difference in you used to talk a lot of tactics, we'd talk everything from OODA loop to the lizard brain, to those things that you guys as courses were teaching us. It has been thrilling for me to see your businesses start to thrive, to see how you just continue to go from a desperate entrepreneur now to a thriving entrepreneur. Big kudos, man. It is cool to watch.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate it, man.
Well, tell me the best, tell everybody the best way to find you of your newest and most exciting thing that you're working on.
Yeah, I'm most prevalent on Instagram and in LinkedIn. And so depending on what people are after, like, what their flavor is, they can find me on those two platforms.
And just spell your name on there. Is it just the Matt Schneider at Instagram?
It's Matt Schneider _official.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think it's that way on both. But yeah, and the links to a lot of the stuff that we're doing, whether it's the coaching or the couples community stuff, all the things can be found on those, I believe.
Well, big kudos, man. It has been awesome to catch up with you, and I can't wait to have lunch. That we're in the same country, I guess, now. So
yeah,
great
to
see you.
do it. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that.